What's up, guys? Welcome back to the THP Strength Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about fast twitch muscle fibers. This guy's twitchy.
What is that?
That is like a squirrel of all things. Anyways, we're going to talk about how you get more fast twitch muscle fibers, if that's even possible. We'll talk about hypertrophy, hyperplasia, whether or not steroids and drugs impact your type 2 muscle fibers, and what the implications are on your injury risk. Anyways, getting into it, I'm John Evans, Iker's the highest jumper in the world. This is the highest jumper in the world. Isaiah Rivera has 50.5 inch vertical. And you could say he's got quite a bit of type 2 muscle fiber.
If you were a betting man.
How much do you have?
Yeah, if you were to slice my vastus medialis.
I think there was like this interesting, I don't know where I saw this, but they looked at like cross-sectional area slivers, and there wasn't as much type 2 muscle fiber in weightlifters as I thought, like relative to type 1. But the whole conversation is a bit of a moot point because it's, one, dictated by your nervous system. That's actually what determines the muscle fibers. The brain innervates the muscle adapts to the fact that it has more innervation, so it needs less oxygen, which is what makes it a white muscle fiber when you're looking at it underneath a microscope. Did you know that?
Oh, I did not know that.
So if you look at a cross-sectional area for a muscle cell, what it looks like is like a beehive almost, because you're chopping it in half and you have all the sarcomeres, which the muscle cells are little like circles when you cut them in half. And the red ones are the ones that were dark black, are the ones that are receiving more oxygen. That's why, like...
Is it from blood? Like the blood, like it's...
Yeah. So, like, if you've ever... This is going to be gross, but, like, when you eat turkey and you have dark meat and white meat... Dark meat is type 1 fiber. White meat is type 2 fiber.
You know my dad, I remember once... This is when I was, like,
You can
little.
talk into your mic. Just hold it, like...
Elbow
on the
Please
front,
don't hit me.
Elbow on your leg. That's the distance I want you to hold it.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
you can hold it a little
when I was little, I remember I was eating, and then my dad told me that he's like, you see the white meat? That's the one you want.
Type 2.
Yeah.
Type 2.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
actually sick. Yeah, because there's no oxygen.
And that's the day I started making them in my body. I was like,
started meditating it into existence.
Actually, speaking of which,
Me.
okay, what are the benefits to type 2 versus type 1, and can you make yourself have more type 2?
The benefit is that type 2 fiber is innervated by alpha motor neurons, which are bigger nerve cells. They are more easily able to transmit action potentials down them, and they're more easily... Nerves have to meet a threshold. There's a gradient potential, and then that gradient potential adds up and leads to an action potential. Once that action potential fires, it moves down every consecutive nerve all the way to the muscle, and then it innervates, depending on the nerve, a lot of muscle fibers, and that muscle fiber leads to a muscle contraction, which, as we know in the lever system that is our body, leads to locomotion. So the better you're able to innervate the alpha motor neurons, the more force you're able to recruit. We also have something called the size principle, which means that we recruit the smallest to the largest motor units in that order, meaning the small ones first and then the largest motor units last. And so if you have a lot of alpha motor neurons, that means that they're more sensitive, so they recruit earlier, and we recruit more muscles whenever a motor unit does fire, which is really, really beneficial if you're trying to generate a lot of force, right? You have bigger muscles or more muscles firing at the same time, and they're synchronized in unison, and that leads to a lot of force, faster force. Yeah. So that's the benefit.
Bigger muscles, even faster.
Bigger, more explosive muscles recruiting at the same time, more quickly, more sooner than people who have less type 2 fibers. That's the big benefit of it. So it all comes back to the brain and your nervous system. And then, can you get more type 2 fibers? That is the question. You can't necessarily you can't have bigger neurons innervating more type 2 muscle fibers. All the muscle fibers you have in the body, all that happens is that you increase the size of those muscles. So the neurons aren't going to change. You're not going to get more neurons. You can't, like, that's why when you have a sever of your spinal cord, you're paralyzed, right? Yeah. Because you can't regenerate those on your own. And the same thing is true for the motor units. You can't innervate more muscle fibers from a given neuron, and you can't decide how many muscles are innervated by a given neuron. However, we have a lot of neurons in the human body. We have a lot of plexuses that come out that are fairly thick for every single human, and you can determine how those muscle fibers contract via intent. And this is why intent is so important. So the harder you try, the more type 2 fibers you are able to recruit. Even though you might have an easier time recruiting more type 2 fibers than I do, because you are more explosive, you have better neurons for it, I can train my brain to innervate those sooner, even though it might not be as soon as you. I can train it to innervate better than what it currently does, and train those motor units to not react, but I would say have an action potential happen quicker. And if that happens, what happens is you start recruiting type 2 fibers more readily, because you're trying harder, your intent's higher, your nervous system is saying, try as hard as you can, more frequently. What happens is those type 2 fibers are getting a lot of force through them really frequently, right? And as a result, they get bigger. So even though you're not recruiting more type 2 fibers, the type 2 fibers you have are getting bigger. You can think about it like, I love cars because they're great analogies. And let's say you have a V6, right? And you have a 2 liter or 2.5 liter V6. You've got a V10. You've got a 5.2 liter V10. If I only have a 2.5 liter V6, I can bore that engine out and I can now get it to 3.5. Maybe I'll never be a 5.2 V10, but at least I can be a 3.6 liter V6. So I have a bigger displacement, which allows me to use what I have, right? That's similar.
You can throw a turbo in there.
You could throw a turbo in there. Yeah, that's like your
bigger
tendons.
fuel injectors.
Yeah, bigger fuel injectors. That's like getting more coordinated, having the pistons fire at the right time, getting more boost sooner. That's what training does, right? You get more coordinated and you use what you have better.
Would you say you're a human body tuner?
I wouldn't say a tuner. I'm a fabricator.
Oh.
And a tuner.
And a tuner. You do both.
I'm a fabricator. I go in there and I'm like, all right, let's rebuild this engine. Let's make it bigger and better. And if I can put a turbo in there, I'm like beyond a mechanic. I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer. Yeah.
That's cool.
You can't engine swap, but you can make the engine better that you have. Maybe that's a better way to
So let's talk some actionable things. So we know
intent.
Are there any downsides to having too much? Like, let's say an athlete listens to this and they're doing the warm-up set. Every rep is intent, right? Every single rep. Maybe they're a mid-hypertrophy cycle.
Like you pick up.
They're doing 4x14 squat, and every rep is intent. Then they go to hip thrust, 4x10. Every rep is intent.
And then they walk out of the gym, and instead of walking, they sprint.
They sprint into their car.
And they sit down as fast as they can.
Yeah. They move like a squirrel. Boom, boom. Is there any downsides to that?
Yeah, you're going to get hurt really quickly because we're not designed to do that. Our bodies are designed to be distance runners, actually. We're designed to outrun gazelle to the point that they can't run anymore, a lion, and then we still can keep running and hit them with a spear because we have a big brain and high endurance. That's what our bodies are built to do, is bipedal humans that were meant to run on 2 feet for long periods of time. We're very well designed for that.
So with the car analogy, it's not just that you're an engineer / tuner / engine rebuilder. You're doing that with Honda Accords constantly, because it's like
all the time,
it's a car that isn't the human body is a car that isn't meant to go freaking drag race.
I get like human beings we're like the most reliable vehicle, right? We're meant to go for a really long time it's like if Tesla actually backed its claims, but we'll keep it petrol for the sake of the analogy. We're like a Camry. We're meant to go for 250,000 miles with minimal maintenance, and whatever else. But I'm trying to take that
distance run, lift light weights, eat well, live a long time,
stay light. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make that Camry in your case, like the most powerful machine I possibly can. It's maybe like a bulldozer, but not more, but like super like a truck, like a big old
like those dragster cars, like the dragster pickup trucks.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think of like the TRX. It's like a 6.2 liter V8 beastly tank of a torquey vehicle, right? You're not necessarily going you're not Usain Bolt. So if that's a drag car, and we're not a football player, so we're not a Formula One vehicle, or we're not a team sport athlete or basketball players kind of like a Formula One car. We're not a Le Mans, which is like a tweener with distance. You got to have endurance. So that's like a decathlete maybe or something like that. Yeah, kind of. You got to be able to go around a course for like.
It's just torquey. I'm just trying to beat someone at the red light.
Exactly, bro. You're at the light, go. Yeah. How fast can you pick up and go? That's like you. You're fucking dump truck power. And yeah, so I'm trying to take Camrys and make them that. And if you're like a 1 foot jumper, you're like a Corvette. Yeah. Let's go with a Corvette. You're a Corvette. A little bit versatile, change of direction, kind of, not really, but you got high end, higher revving, not as torquey as you.
All right, cool. So I guess the takeaway is lift with max intent.
Lift with max intent for sure.
What type of like exercises would recruit more type 2 muscle fiber? Like let's assuming max intent. What type of training would you do as well?
To recruit max intent? Like what exercises?
Yeah.
Ollies. Ollies are really good. The second pull is amazing for that. Hex bar jumps, barbell squat jumps, dumbbell squat jumps. Any jump that you're doing with a weight is going to be really good. Really, really good because you have to have high intent. Assuming you're jumping as high as you can or as hard as you can. That's why I always say jump as hard as you can to recruit as much type 2 fiber as possible. Squats can be really good for increasing cross-sectional area of all muscle fiber, but if you are capable of lifting heavy and fast, I like guys to. Like yesterday 2 days ago, I did high intent calf raise, seated calf raise, lying hamstring curl, and I did high intent, and cleans. On the squats, I won't because my knee is so delicate and it gets so much loading that I don't necessarily want to mess with that. But if you could, that would be even better, right? Is push intent on that. The downside is your nervous system gets messed up. It's very hard on your connective tissue, so you have to be very healthy and robust. I'd say one of the things that one of the reasons why you're so effective at what you do, and I said this in the Dunk Camp lecture, is because you're a well-oiled machine when it comes to moving efficiently. You move very efficiently, and despite a lot of the damage that you've done to your body through over-jumping, you're able to overcome that because you move so efficiently. You're always hammering the nail in straight, right? Whereas like me, the nail's always facing a little bit slanted, and every time I hammer it in, it gets a little more bent or something like that. So I'm really limited in the number of strikes I can take. For you, it's like I can hammer that nail down the center as many times as I want because you move so efficiently. You know, biomechanically, you're stressing tissue appropriately the way it's meant to be stressed, which means I can increase the training load a lot higher than I can for other people, and I can include intent where other people might not be able to. So definitely doing that to increase your type 2 cross-sectional area. Like I said, you can't increase the number that you have, but you can increase the volume of that muscle fiber. And there was a research study done by Mike Stone. He's the researcher out of ETSU. His wife, Meg, is like a world-class discus thrower. He works with a lot of Olympic weightlifters. They basically had grad students stand behind their bobsled athletes and their weightlifters, and every single rep they would say like push as hard as they could on a squat and a clean. They didn't look at health levels, but what they saw is that the cross-sectional area of type 2 fibers, they measured pre and post for the same individuals, and their cross-sectional area of type 2 fibers increased a lot. So they do a lot of pulls, not even a lot of power cleans, anything technically limited they minimize, right? So they always go with intent. They always try to manage the volume of those high intent exercises, and that's pretty much it. That is the most important thing. Sprinting is another really good way. Jumping, you'll even have that happen to some extent.
It's crazy with jumping. I don't think people realize
that's on the concentric phase, by the way, which is interesting. We haven't really looked at maximizing eccentric velocities to do that, but we do recruit more type 2 fibers in eccentric activity.
But with jumping, I think people, it's a lot more prevalent than we think. People not jumping with max intent in their jump sessions.
I don't even do it sometimes.
When I realized that, like when I was testing 51, I wasn't even feeling that good. Flight times 0.97 plus. When I look back at the video, I was really close to touching 51. And then my knee was hurting on the jumps, and I was trying. That's the other thing. I was like, every jump, I was trying as hard as I could, and I was like, whoa, like, I think even when I do my dunk sessions,
you're not at 100%.
I'm like very rare. Like it might be one jump.
I always tell guys, that's why it's important to test your vertical regularly and use it as a tool for training.
Yep.
Like Andy jumped extremely well at camp, right? Better than I've seen him jump since 2018.
And he was using
a vert trainer because his intent was able to be so incredibly high on that activity.
And my flight times on Vertex.
That's why I like that. You can cut the volume down so much.
Yeah.
Like you could do 10 to 20 high quality jumps, and you're just gonna get better at vertical jump because you're regularly seeing high intent jumping. Like even if you test like shit, it doesn't matter. You're not using it as a tool to test. You're using it as a tool to push intent. It could be an arbitrary height. You could not have the sticker on it to tell the height. Just put it at something you can't touch and go touch it.
Try to touch it.
Yeah,
bro. My flight times when I Vertec are always higher, and I land higher than I do in dunks and height checks and stuff like that. And it's because it could be literally mid-session bad training cycle, and I won't get lower than 0.93, 0.94 on a one-hander.
There's a study for that. They looked at distances that people jumped and touched. And they noticed when there's a marker out there for distance or height, specifically height, they will pretty much always jump higher. They also will adopt different jump techniques as they get tired to get higher.
I think that's also why when we look at guys that dunk a lot versus do plyos, when you're barely able to dunk, that is a max jump.
Yeah.
Or if you're trying to touch rim for the first time.
Like Rick B has to jump 110% to dunk on 10.
Yeah. He's having to go 100%. Yep. I think that level's off as you get better because, like for me, I could East Bay at 90% effort.
Which is so crazy.
So
that's why I like to go on 10 feet.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people, cough, Austin sometimes, who avoids 10 feet because he thinks I'm not going to dunk well, therefore it's not worth it. And I'm like, you're not doing this. That's why I love one-handers all the time. I just lob the ball high as fuck and just try to go get it because that forces me to have max intent. That's why I don't really care about all these trick dunks and shit because I just like jumping high and I like trying to improve my body's physical readiness. Yeah. And the assumption always was, well, if you jump higher, all these dunks get easier. Not necessarily true because every dunk is a specific skill and you have to develop that specific skill at max intensity, which is maybe another level to this, right? That's why low rimming is so important.
I just realized, too, why in rehab I can always get back to dunking relatively early.
Because it's not that intense.
It's not high effort. And I always go to spin dunks early. Why? Spin dunks is way less. Off the dribble spin is going to be way less load and intent.
Why do you think I never have you go Vertec? Or if I do, I tell you cap at 11.2 or 11.3.
Yeah.
Because it's controlled. And now I can do the same thing with your dunks because I can control the level of intensity. It goes off vert, and then I'll go one step off dribble, one hand, two hander, and then I'll progress like windmill with your IT bend. If you remember this, windmill and East Bay were the next level of intensity.
Yeah.
I use those as a gradient for intensity. You weren't at 100%. You didn't need to be at 100%. You just had to be able to do those to make it through the competitive season. Same thing's kind of true with your knee right now. That's why I'm not worried about it. I'm like, it doesn't take.
You need to. It's like you need to get me to 70%.
I need to get you competition ready, which is not world class, world record breaking ready. Usain Bolt can win the Olympics with a 990. He doesn't need to run 958, right? Yep. Same thing's true of you.
It's the LeBron method too.
It is the LeBron method.
LeBron doesn't have to play hard.
Doesn't have to play at 100%. So the downside with intent is that it's high risk once your output goes up. That's why, and it takes even more training at intent to get better. That's why it's so hard to get better when you're really good. Diminishing returns is partially because it's so hard to stay healthy. It's so hard to stay healthy when you're trying to push intent every single day. Like you've seen that. I'm seeing it right now. My hip's a little sore and banged up from pushing intent.
But if you're a beginner,
you're a beginner, dude. You're 15 to 20 years old. You haven't done shit, and you're totally healthy. Yeah, when I was 14, I could push up hard on every single squat. I could do plyos 3 days a week. I could jump every day if I wanted to. I didn't because I didn't know any better. But like at the time, yeah, I probably could have got away with that. Do I think that doing that with like a periodized plan would have been more effective? Yeah, because it did cost me in the long term a lot of health repercussions because I did push intent on that shit without a periodized plan. And if I had known better, I would have done ISOs. I would have had it planned out. I would have jumped twice a week. A lot of these younger guys that have shitty jump technique, I have them jumping twice a week. And then I do that for like a year or two. And then eventually I'm like, all right, now it's time
until they get knee pain, basically.
Not even then. Sometimes they just stop progressing because the intensity and the weight, the volume.
That's what we did what you did with Donovan Hawkins.
Yeah. Donovan is a really good example of this. I basically loaded the hell out of him for
If you don't know Donovan Hawkins, by the way, pause this video and go to Instagram and just look up Donovan Hawkins.
Yeah, we had him jump 2 to 3 times a week for 6 to 8 months until we plateaued, even after a deload. And I was like, all right, it's time to start training. We trained for about 6 to 8 months and then unloaded completely. And now he's flying. Like, he's jumping so freaking high. That was planned. He responds well to heavy unloads. He's relatively untrained, and he has a lot more potential. And now you're seeing his vertical, the cluster's going up. Now he's jumping higher, as high as he ever has. Maybe
like
by
me
an
in
inch or two.
2019 with better genes.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The thing with him is he doesn't respond traditionally to training like you do. Like, you're very predictable. I know exactly how you're going to jump depending on what the cycle is. Like, you respond exactly textbook. Donovan does not. Donovan needs very high
Even this
of
last
unloading.
cycle basically went
Yeah.
according to textbook.
What textbook would say. Donovan does not respond textbook. He needs longer periods of unloading. He responds well to more jumping. He can maintain strength qualities much better with minimal lifting. And I think part of that is he's just not as well trained as you, right? Like, that tracks. He doesn't have as much training age, and he doesn't lift as much weight as you. So he's better genetically speaking. He can get away with doing less and maintaining more because he doesn't see as much diminishing return. The more elite you are, the more you detrain faster. So it takes more to maintain that performance, and the higher and stronger, the more you detrain.
In terms of genes, would you say the lower
he
genetics?
texted me and he said, how if I had 4 years, do you think I could make the Olympics in the decathlon? And I'd say it depends how good you are day one. I don't know if he has better genetics. But if he came out and ran the 100-meter dash in 11.2, I'd be like, yeah, you're going to probably go to the Olympics in 4 years. And, like, throws the shot fucking 14 meters.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, you got high potential.
Well, I think it's a good spot.
Wait, what were you going to say?
Genetically. If you have two athletes. Athlete A has really good genetics, hasn't trained much, but the two athletes can jump the same height.
Okay. So
then you have athlete B who has lower genetics. Basically, what I'm asking is the higher above your bottom you are, like the closer you are to your peak.
Right.
Is it the easier that you detrain from that? Like, will a genetic freak be
genetic
able to
freaks maintain with less work, so they don't need as much and they can maintain incredibly well.
Yeah.
Guys who are trained to a certain point need more to maintain what they have.
Yeah.
And they detrain a lot faster as well. Like,
the person I think of when I think of that is
versus like Donovan
Sutherland.
Sutherland doesn't need anything.
He just jumps
everything. He's always
jumps 45 minimum.
Yeah. Oh,
every single time. If he steps on a court, you can jump every single day and at least 45. I think the lowest I've seen him jump is like 44, 45.
Yep. That's very, very true. He doesn't need as much to maintain his vertical.
But I also don't see
It takes a lot for him to detrain.
Yeah.
He has to pretty much not train for like 6 to 8 months, just play basketball and probably
still might.
eat shit. He'll jump high, but he won't jump like super, super high.
Yeah.
For him to get to like 51, 52, like he's already at such a high baseline, he needs to train increasingly hard and learn a lot about his body to see how he responds. Like, I would have to be there in person to see pretty much all the time how he's going to respond to training, because it's so hard to tell with those guys. Like, coaching someone like Anthony Height was really difficult because he was hurt trying to rehab, and he's such an anomaly that it was hard to figure out what drives his performance, right? Is it just jumping? Like, he pulled his quad because his outputs were higher than what his body was capable of handling. So I had to rehab him back through squats and stuff, and then he was like, well, I'm just not like jumping super well because I can't jump right now, because the prerequisite forces for him to be healthy are like squatting 350 fucking pounds, right? Like,
and for someone, and he's 5'6",
yeah,
for him to just dunk
is massive output.
And for someone like that, that's probably naturally, he can walk in and jump 90% effort.
Get hurt.
But now you have to hey, do net touches?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And he gets hurt every time he jumps because his outputs are so freaking high that most of the lifting is just to keep him healthy. But then he ended up liking lifting and was like, I don't really care about jumping. I've never trained for it. I just like lifting weights. And it's like, okay. Definitely a different case. But yeah, that's a good place to stop.
If you're a Toyota Camry and you want to turn your little engine into a souped up turboed big fuel injectors,
it's a Supra.
New intercooler, put a downpipe in there, new exhaust. If you want to do all that to your body,
go to
thpstrength.com.
650 wheel horsepower, but a completely different way.
Yeah. And use the code THP. You get 10% off your first month.
I bet you guys didn't know we're big car guys.
Yeah.
We are. Thanks for watching.
I've turned into a car guy over the years.
We'll see you guys oh, no, we won't. No podcast tomorrow. Happy 4th of July if you live in America.
Woo!
If not, I'm sorry for our ignorance. Thanks for watching, guys.